Hi, everybody. Ian Bremmer here, and a quick take to kick off your week. Thought I would talk a bit about the United States and China because the relationship has been surprisingly stable. This is one where President Trump, at the beginning of the term, wanted to have a much more confrontational style, was going to push the Chinese to the brink economically with a series of trade measures that amounted to a boycott, expected the Chinese would bend the knee, would capitulate to the United States. As a consequence of that, it's a weaker economy, a smaller economy. That's not what happened. The Chinese stood up, they hit back hard, and Trump recognized that that was a fight he did not want to happen. Ever since then, it's been let's engage face to face, let's talk a lot on the phone. Let's ensure that the economic measures are softer and smoother. And let's also not fight with each other on big security measures, on AI, on anything else. There's been some efforts by the Chinese to be nicer to the Americans, buying lots of soybeans, for example. That's red state farmers. They've cracked down on some of the precursor chemicals that are used in fentanyl that are exported to the United States. And the United States has been cautious on Taiwan. They've not supported Japan when China hit the Japanese hard for their comments in being more supportive of a coming to the aid of Taiwan if they were attacked. They've held back on new defense sales to the Taiwanese. Trump has talked about Xi Jinping repeatedly as a leader that he respects greatly, that it's a G2, treating Xi with much more respect and much more empathy than he does with most, though not all, American allies, whether it's in Asia, it's in Europe, or it's in the Gulf. So that's and certainly closer than he has more recently been treating Narendra Modi, who had built such a more warm and friendly relationship with Trump in the first term, precisely as a counterweight to the Chinese. Now, the question is to what extent this is sustainable. And I'm not saying because Trump wants to change the policy, I don't think he does. There's a big plan for an AI discussion between the two leaders in September about governance, global governance. There's efforts to meet up 4 times in addition to the one time that's already happened, so 3 more times over the course of the year. That's all pretty significant. But events, dear boy, events in the advanced technology spaces, which are moving a lot faster than traditional diplomacy, the potential for a growing fight between the US and China, the likelihood that we're going to have more decoupling between the US and China is going up and up and up. And some of this is congressional action, worried about the Chinese competing much more effectively with the United States and with the West as they are working to build their own semiconductors, their own advanced lithography, most importantly, their own AI models powered by lots and lots of compute, powered by lots and lots of very cheap energy. And also that if we believe that AI is likely to cause more and more near-term crises as the models become more advanced, as they can identify flaws in cybersecurity, as they can develop bioweapons, as they can engage in self-enhancement and eventually replication, that the American government is going to want to have much more control over these models, which the Western multinational corporations will certainly accept, even if they're not happy about all of it. But the Chinese will not. And that means that they won't be allowed in to the United States, and that the Americans will be increasingly worried about the Chinese having access to American technology. We see this already even in robotics. The US has recently banned humanoid robotics from China into the US, an area where the Chinese actually have a clear lead over the US and the rest of the world. And as we see more of these efforts by the Americans, the Chinese are likely to retaliate, and that retaliation will be targeted and it will be reciprocal. Now, I don't know how quickly this is coming, and I don't know whether it is going to be severe enough and soon enough to derail the September summit meeting between the two leaders. But I certainly think it is plausible. We should not assume that this is going to go ahead as planned. I'd be very surprised if we get a productive roadmap for AI governance that comes out of a meeting between Trump and Xi Jinping, because the two countries are heading in such different directions and the level of mistrust is only competed over by the speed of the race and the amount of capital that is deployed towards trying to build a meaningful advantage over the other. So I guess I fear that irrespective of what has been an entente between the United States and China for most of the last year, that it is not likely to be sustainable. And the implications of a breakdown when it occurs are economically great, and they're also great from a national security perspective. So something I've not been particularly worried about for the last year, because the leaders have both really liked the idea that they are going to work hard to minimize confrontation and ensure a safer space for stable relations in most areas. But I think the ability to continue to do that is eroding fast and will probably break in the next year, certainly before the end of the Trump administration. So that's an important issue, I think, one we should watch carefully, one that's moving very fast, and one that will have big global implications. That's it for me for today, and I'll talk to you all real soon.